You're listening to Optimal Pairing, a Fire Emblem podcast.
I'm Austin, and I'm a Fire Emblem veteran.
I'm Patrick, and I'm a Fire Emblem beginner.
And in this podcast, we'll discuss our playthrough of the newest Fire Emblem game,
Fire Emblem Three Houses,
for the Nintendo Switch.
Hey, Austin. How's
Hey,
it going?
Patrick. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm all right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the first episode of Optimal Pairing. We're going to talk about Fire Emblem Three Houses.
That's right. That's what we're going to do.
And right now, we're recording this and releasing this before the game comes out.
This is the pre-episode episode.
The pre-episode episode. That's right. So we don't know what this game's exactly going to look like, and especially me, because I haven't paid as much attention as you have, right?
That's right. I have read and watched a lot of the things.
Yeah, and you've sent me things, some of which I have skimmed,
Yeah.
and some of which I have read, and some of which I have not looked at in depth.
And
like there
most
were
of
some of those things you sent me, like the translations where it was just walls of text. I was like, I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, you didn't spend days just poring over that?
No, partly because of my inexperience with the series too.
That's fair. How about the memes? How are the memes?
Austin's been sending me some of the memes, which some of them make sense to me because of my general knowledge of Fire Emblem, but a lot of them don't. Or like the specifics of it don't make as much sense to me. Like I get that, and we'll get into this, the whole like waifu thing.
All the tier lists.
Yeah, Austin's been sending me tier lists of, I guess, like which characters you should date.
That's right. Yeah, but all like tongue-in-cheek
right,
jokes about
and some
it.
of them were
Yes.
jokey. Yeah,
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
Anyway, totally off topic, or not totally on topic,
Very
but,
on topic.
So I think we're gonna just kind of talk about first, like not ourselves, like in depth, but a sort of our relationship to Fire Emblem and video games and that kind of stuff. We're both into video games,
Absolutely.
but I haven't played a single Fire Emblem game ever, or even watched footage of them, or like I've heard a little bit about them, but I've just never done it.
And does how much of your information about Fire Emblem would you say comes from Smash Brothers?
Right. At this point, a large amount, but that's really just they have swords and it's a fantasy anime setting, and that's about it. You know, and
That's right.
I know the names of them, and I guess also some of them are men and women
Yeah.
simultaneously somehow.
Oh.
Well, like Corrin can be a girl or a boy.
Oh, that's right. That you can gender swap
But
them.
it's the same name.
Yes,
and
and
same person.
Robin, too.
Robin, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's all I know.
Okay. Yes, and so we should clarify, I am a veteran of Fire Emblem. I have played Fire Emblem Sacred Swords for the GBA, the one that came out before that afterwards, which was just released as Fire Emblem in the US, but is known as Blazing Blades in Japan. I've watched my little brother, who we'll get into in a little bit, play Path of Radiance and Path of Dawn.
Okay.
But I myself have played Awakening, Fate's Birthright, Fate's Conquest, skipped Revelations.
So wait, I'm interjecting here as somebody that does not know anything about this. They're all named Fates.
Yes.
But they're three different games?
So it was a game released, Birthright and Conquest were released at the same time. Kind of
Sort
like
of the Pokemon thing?
Yeah, kind of like a Pokemon Blue and Red type situation. But you could even, and this is what I did, I bought Fate's digital download, and I didn't know which path I was going to choose. And when I chose Birthrights, it cut off the Conquest data.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so then I had to buy that later.
That's weird.
And then I skipped Shadows of Valentia. That's actually normally called Echoes Shadows of Valentia, which was a remake of the second Fire Emblem.
Okay.
That's prior was Japanese only. And then I have played a boatload of Fire Emblem Heroes.
Boatload.
A boatload. That's
I
right.
think we can cuss if you want to.
Okay.
I'm cool with it.
Done. I am
Fuckload
too.
would be fine. Or boatload. Boatload's nice
Or
too.
shitload.
Yeah, there you go.
Mhm.
So what about is Fire Emblem Heroes the mobile game?
That is the mobile game.
Okay,
That's
I
right.
was thinking of Warriors. You didn't play that one, did
No,
you?
I skipped
Okay.
the Warriors. Yeah.
But that's kind of its own non-Fire Emblem
Yeah,
kind of game
That
thing.
style of game does not speak to me as
Me
much.
either,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. Even if it was a franchise I really like Zelda, I don't play the Hyrule
Yeah.
Warriors.
Love Zelda and didn't really touch that one either.
Okay, so and that's most of the games that you talked about there. Like you covered, I guess. What was the first Fire? I don't really know the history of. Well, let me say this. I guess what we're gonna get into is like I don't know much about the game. Like I think we talked about. I know it's a tactical game,
Yeah.
like a strategy game,
Okay.
whatever you want to call it, with grid-based battles.
Is there a game that you have played that you could compare it to?
Well, it doesn't seem fair. I mean, I played Final Fantasy Tactics a little bit a long time ago
Yeah.
when I was, 17 or whenever that game came out.
That's
I
a fair comparison.
Bought it, but I didn't really get into it.
Okay.
And so I only played it a little bit. But recently, in the last couple of years, I've played Mario versus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which I know is not like stylistically at all.
Probably
the
has a
same.
more in-depth story than Fire Emblem. I'm just kidding. That was a joke.
But I think the sort of grid-based, turn-based,
Yes.
Everybody has a different attack, different kinds of characters. It's XCOM style game, right?
That's right. That's
which
right.
is Fire Emblem. XCOM. I mean, I assume
Yes.
there's differences too, but
So I've never played XCOM.
Me either, but I just hear
I've
about
heard
it a
the
lot.
comparison made before, yeah, and so I think that probably does give some context.
and I think that's the depth of my knowledge about gameplay. And then my knowledge about story, I think I just said fantasy, anime,
Okay,
sexy people.
so
That's it.
you saying anime, I want to launch into something that I feel very passionate about.
Okay.
And so I should also preface when I played Sacred Stones, I really enjoyed it, but I would get frustrated because of something called permadeath.
Oh yeah, that's something I've heard of too. I've heard
Yes.
that you can choose that or not choose it. I don't know if that's always been the case.
Yeah, well, it used to just be a thing you
Just
had to
be
deal
permadeath.
with. Yes.
So I'm sorry to keep peppering you with questions while you're trying to tell me something, but Sacred Stones was the first Fire Emblem game ever, or no?
No, that
was
it's
the first one that
I
you
played.
played.
Yes.
Okay.
So, okay.
How
hold
long
on.
has Fire Emblem been around? I'm gonna quiz you. here. When was the first Fire Emblem
Oh.
game? Do you know?
I don't know. I want to say late 80s.
Do you know what
NES
platform? NES.
But Famicom, it didn't
Right.
come to the US.
Oh, it
was
wasn't in the US.
No, and so the first one to come to the US is that Blazing Blades that I mentioned that came just as Fire Emblem, which was, I want to say 2004 or 5.
But you played Sacred Stones first.
Yes, they were released within like 2 years of each other.
Okay.
So we bought Sacred Stones first, played that one, and then went back and played the
Gotcha.
one that came out like a few years prior.
Okay.
So Dark Dragon and Sword of Light. And those are the Marth games for you all who know Marth from
Those are the NES ones or the Famicom ones, like you just said.
That's right. And so April 20th, 1990 is when the first game released.
Okay.
And there are 16. This is going to be the 16th game.
Okay.
So it's a long series. And
that 16 counts those games that are like the Pokemon Red and Blue or whatever.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. And that's the only Conquest is one of the paths. Fates is the only Fire Emblem that has branched that way, like Pokemon has.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So you were telling me something about Sacred Stones or something a minute, and then I interrupted you with a bunch of questions.
So initially, my younger brother was more passionate about playing these games than I was, And so that's why I was mostly a spectator of Path of Radiance and Path of Dawn, because that permadeath was so challenging for me as a player.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I kind of am nervous about that, and we'll talk about that later. But that
Yes.
it both is exciting,
Yes.
and scary, or if I
Yes. But in the conversation of anime, both
that's right, we're talking about anime.
Yes, both Adam and I feel very passionate that even though this is a more Japanese game, that it's like a Japanese take on Western fantasy. And so the art style of many of the earlier games is East imitating West, and much less anime than people assume it is.
Okay, and I'm going to clarify. You said Adam a few times, and you may have even said he's your brother, but Adam is your brother.
He's my brother. He's my younger brother who's very passionate about this, and I have come to also be passionate about it, but he was the one who initially really latched onto Fire Emblem. Okay. Yes.
So, I think that paints a broad picture of your Fire Emblem experience, but yeah, so are we ready to move on past our sort of histories or my lack of history? Or is there anything else you want to say?
Well, and I guess I do want to name, though, that it has claimed its anime-ness. The series of Fire Emblem has more said, if we lean into more traditional anime.
Yeah. Well, I played a lot of Final Fantasy growing up, right? And I think one thing that's interesting is the old Final Fantasy games, which I played when I was a kid, which is Western 1 through 3 or 1, 4, and 6 or whatever, with our current Japanese numbering, which is the now accepted numbering. Yes. But the first 6 games, the animation, the sprites, the pixel art, it wasn't very anime-ish because it couldn't be.
Right.
But then when 7 comes along and all the games after, and 7's kind of in that weird muddy, it's 3D, but they weren't very good at the art yet. So it's kind of it doesn't quite fit into this, but it does more than it fits the old ones. The art came to... And the promotional art has always been very anime-esque in the manuals for Final Fantasy 2 or 4 or whatever you want to call it. I remember being those pictures are so different than the pictures of the character, the sprites on screen as a kid. But so I think that maybe is that kind of true also of Fire Emblem? It kind of owned its anime-ness because of the graphics meeting the ability to, to show that.
I think that's right. And I want to say even with Sacred Stones, I was on the GBA and the games on the DS before we get to the 3DS games. They were still in this middle ground of kind of anime, but really trying to be more Western visually. Okay. And it was really more with the Radiant series that it leaned into the anime trappings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're talking about the anime stuff. Maybe we should talk about it more. Are you also arguing that currently the recent Fire Emblem games and even this one shouldn't be categorized as anime?
I am comfortable with people categorizing it as anime now, but I think that often that gets projected onto some of the past entries. Okay. In a way that doesn't quite feel true to them. Okay. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll circle back to the anime question a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's talk about, I guess, Fire Emblem Three Houses specifically, and maybe sort of what the franchise broadly, if it applies to what what we think might happen with this game.
Well, and so I want to ask you, having watched the trailers and knowing that this is a series that you want to get into, what are your impressions of what you're getting into?
Yeah. So I think I'm going to back up just a minute and say I've been into playing video games since I was a kid, but I've gone through periods where I've played more or less. And in the last few years with the Switch coming out, I've gotten really back into gaming. because of the portability has helped. I have a wife and a kid, and
Mm-hmm.
just it's helped me actually be able to take it to my work and play on my lunch break, and play when I'm at a doctor's office. So I get a lot more hours of gaming in,
Yes.
and I'm really excited about coming back to Nintendo because I was playing Xbox 360 and Xbox One, and this got me back into Nintendo. And so I decided there's all these Nintendo franchises I didn't play because I either just didn't play them or they didn't exist when I was back in the Super Nintendo days, and I played some in 64. So I kind of made this, like, I'm going to play all these Nintendo franchises that people are into. There's a new Fire Emblem game coming out. Yes.
Let's
you know
do
what I mean?
it.
Let's, I'm going to give it a shot, but I've gotten super pumped up about it because of talking to you and like
sending you all those Famitsu articles. Yeah.
but I'm excited about it because I didn't think I maybe loved this sort of game for multiple reasons, both the gameplay and the anime stuff, which we'll talk about more. But I've kind of come around on all of that. Thanks in large part to Mario versus Rabbids. I really loved that game. Whereas like when I was a kid, playing Final Fantasy Tactics was hard for me.
Okay.
But I think I'm into this style of game now.
Yes.
And I used to really like anime, and I kind of felt like this is sort of a pattern for me of all the things I used to love, kind of like going away from them a while. But I'm trying to be open to re-embracing it right now.
Coming home, yeah.
Exactly. So that's not the question you asked. But
that was great.
I'm gonna come back to the question you asked, which is what do I know about this game, or what was your question exactly?
Yeah, no, I guess you're what you have seen of the trailers and what promotional things you have seen. What I guess are you expecting, and what are you excited about?
Okay,
yeah.
So I actually really like the school idea.
Yeah,
a lot of people are like, oh, it's just like a Harry Potter ripoff. Well, I don't think Harry Potter gets to claim fantasy school. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I've been a fantasy fan for as long as I've been a video game. Well, maybe not, but like I read D&D books, Forgotten Realms and
yes,
and Dragonlance and all that stuff when I was a kid, and I still read fantasy books. And I remember reading about magic schools in some of those books. And also one of my favorite fantasy series is I'm blanking on the name of the series, but the King Killer Chronicles.
Okay.
Which is not finished. Love you, Patrick Rothfuss, but finish your books.
Right.
But I shouldn't say that, but take your time, but I'd love to read it when it's done. So he's written the first 2 books of this 3-book series.
Gotcha.
And a large chunk of both of the first 2 books takes place at a fantasy, like, magic school.
Yes.
And so, like, I'm already like that. To me, that's a much better story than Harry Potter. Like, for me, the fantasy school touchstone is King Killer Chronicles.
Right.
So I'm like, so anyway, I really like the idea of a fantasy school. So I'm excited about that.
Yes.
I'm excited about the gameplay. I like I said, I kind of got into this style of game recently, so I'm interested in that. I'm fearful of the permadeath, but like
Fair.
I kind of feel like I should play with it that way, but I don't know. We'll talk about that, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of interested to see what I don't know, to learn about it, like, because I don't know a lot about the tropes of these games or what have you.
Yes. And story-wise, what are your impressions of what's going to happen story-wise?
So I don't think this is a spoiler for anybody that's paying any attention to this, but like all I really know is that you play as a protagonist who is the protagonist, I guess. Like,
right.
It doesn't have a name.
Byleth.
Oh, they do have a name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Byleth, and you get to choose if Byleth is a man or a woman.
That's right.
And they have green hair?
It starts as like a dark teal.
It starts one way and then changes?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. Okay. So
spoilers.
Yeah. So you pick you're one of the genders, and then you like are a teacher at an academy, which I guess is not just like Magic Academy, which is another reason I feel like it's unfair to make too many comparisons to Harry Potter. But you train students, and maybe you even pick one of these 3 houses. It's in the title.
That's right.
So there's these 3 different groups of people, which I guess also is what makes it have the Harry Potter reference, like of the like different houses within the school.
That's right.
So maybe that's where the comparison comes from somewhat too. you pick one of those, you train some people, and then there's a big time jump to 5 years later, and those 3, I guess they also represent regions of this continent.
Yes.
And that they are now, or island, and they are now at war.
Yes.
And I don't know anything beyond that.
Okay. Do you remember the earlier trailers focus more on her, and we have seen less about her?
Oh, yeah, there's some dragon lady.
Yeah. Oh, you know that she's a dragon.
Is that a spoiler? I did maybe from something you sent me, or maybe just I picked that up along the way. But yes, I know there's some little, and then maybe lady is the wrong word too, because isn't she a girl, like a young child? Or maybe during part of it is.
So,
you're hedging, or you're deciding what to tell me here.
I'm deciding what to tell you. So she is she is going to be a dragon. They haven't revealed that in the trailers yet, so I am curious.
I think I just read that in one of the things you sent me of like speculation, because early on people were like, oh, she's got these ears, or she's got this pendant, or she's got something about her physical appearance made everybody think clearly she's a dragon. So maybe I've had a story point spoiled for myself.
Although, so this is one of the things of any Fire Emblem fan there who watched, I think, those early trailers knew she fits within a particular trope of seems like she's a young girl, but is she really as young as we think she is?
Okay.
Is she really a human?
Okay. Yeah, that doesn't really seem to factor into the war, at least that I know of, though probably it does.
It probably does, and it probably in a way that they're protecting us from.
Good.
Yes.
Right? Like, I don't want to know everything.
Yes. But I think that sometimes I forget Sothis is her name.
Okay.
Sometimes when talking about Three Houses, I almost forget about her because she showed up so much in the early promotion material, and then they have focused a lot less on her in the last few months.
And they've been recently focusing heavily on the 3 different houses, or like and especially at the academy. At the academy
and at the I like to call it the monastery.
Oh, is it a monastery?
It is. I like that it has the religious connected to the Church of Saros. We don't really know who that is yet, but it's their goddess.
We don't? Okay. Yeah. That's not a through line in other games, the gods or
there's a big focus on gods and goddesses, and they're usually connected to the dragons kind of thematically. But this particular goddess is, as far as I'm aware, not a returning goddess.
Let me ask this question then. Like, is Fire Emblem kind of like Final Fantasy, where each game is completely new lore, but just a similar feel?
So...
Or is it sort of between those, or there's a little bit of... I don't know.
Yes. So I think the closest thing is maybe Zelda.
Okay.
Where people have patched together these timelines of there are games that like take place on the same continent and share the same story,
but it's almost new every time.
Roundabout, yes. But there's like these 3 games are a more series continual. These 4 are, and they're kind of pieced together.
I'm sure I'm gonna upset somebody by saying this, but I don't really believe that Zelda stuff. I think they just make a new game and then people have kind of patched the things together that they want to.
Yes.
I mean, I know that, like, say Link Between Worlds is the same map as Link to the Past or whatever.
Yes.
And so maybe there's truth to it there, but it just seems like they're just using the same characters and figures, but reimagining it every time. And is this Fire Emblem kind of like that?
So Fire Emblem is like a lot of the same tropes remixed, or the same themes remixed. And there are games that are solidly set in the same setting, and you're left a little bit to connect exactly how those stories are connected. But you feel like, oh, they're in the same continent, so I'm supposed to draw some kind of connection. And then sometimes they just wipe the slate and start over with a whole new... does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think I'm on board.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, once again, I'm interrupting you with questions.
No, you're good. So there's kind of like mini series within series within the larger series.
Okay. Yep. Well, I'm going to flip this on you then, and without
do it,
revealing, hidden story beats to me, like the dragon thing. What are you most excited about for Three Houses in particular?
Yes. Story wise, I am excited for the idea that we do have these 3 houses and they've even shown gameplay during the first year before, I guess, the time jump and the war happens, that you're interacting with all of the students, even so you've chosen the folks that are in your group. So you go with either the Golden Deer or the Black Eagles or the Blue Lions.
Right.
But when you're walking around the monastery, you can talk to a student that isn't directly yours and interact with them in some ways. I understand could like go fishing with them or cook with them.
And try to recruit them, from what I've heard too, right? Like you can maybe win over 1 or 2.
That's right.
At this phase, at least.
That's right. And the limitations of that are not clear yet. Of like, there are probably characters who can't be. And then,
or you really got to go fishing with them.
That's right.
You got to take them
every
fishing.
day, all day. Yeah.
I didn't know there was fishing.
Good
in
old
this game.
country boy. Yeah. Yes, there's a fishing mini game.
Okay.
A few others. But so I like the idea that you develop these relationships with all of these students, and then this war breaks out. And at least what we have seen from the E3 trailer, there is conflict between the 3 nations and the 3 houses. And it feels like you could sympathize with any of the sides, that there's not a clear...
Oh, okay, that's good. I like that kind of a gray thing.
Yes.
And they should do it that way.
Yes.
So that you feel good about which side you've chosen.
Which is very different from Fates, because there were 2 nations that you could choose, and one of them was clearly bad, and one of them was clearly real good. And even when you joined the bad team, you're like, yeah, I'm killing these bitches for the bad guys, but it's for good reasons. And it's like, is it?
Yeah.
They didn't walk the line
it
as
wasn't
well.
nuanced as well.
That's
I think
right.
that's something in modern storytelling that's really that modern storytelling is really excelling at. I mean, like you look at like the Lord of the Rings or something.
Yes.
There's no good in Sauron, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
but nowadays you look at George R.R. Martin or something, and like, oh, you know, who's the bad guy here? There's no bad guy. They're just humans, you know what I mean? Like, or varying levels of bad. Everybody's bad, but nobody's bad, kind of a thing, you know?
That's right. And playing with that, moral.
Ambiguity.
Context.
Kinda.
Yeah.
Oh,
Contextual. Yeah. Morality, I guess. Yeah. So
Cool.
I'm interested to see that explored. Can I also tell you?
Sure.
So this is my theory that has neither been confirmed nor denied.
Ooh, hot takes here, or
Yeah.
maybe that's not the right term, but unique
Yes.
take here.
So one of the trailers that we got pretty early on, we see one of these new beasts wielding a crest as a weapon, and we have since then learned that some of the students have crests.
Okay.
I think there is potential that as the story goes on, some of the students or their family will become these beasts.
Okay. Transform into the monsters.
That's
whatever
right.
they are.
That's right. And that's just me digging into some details and knowing that is also a big anime trope currently.
You mean outside of Fire Emblem, in general?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, at our next episode, well, maybe not our next episode because we might not be deep enough into the game.
Yeah.
But in an episode or 2, we will confirm or disconfirm that theory.
That's right.
So there's going to be, you have on here something about monastery time versus battles. I guess that's sort of one of the things, right? Like with the, I guess we'll call it the first half of the game. We don't know what percentage it is, but the first half or so of the game, you're at it's a monastery.
It's a monastery.
It's
That's
not
right.
just a school.
And I want to say, so as someone who went to seminary, I'm really excited about the Church of Saros and the monastery.
And not as somebody who went to seminary. This is godless.
That's right.
Pagan crap.
No, I'm here for the goddess.
Awesome. So I guess there is this idea of like you get to choose how much time you spend doing activities, right? But and I don't know the answer to this, but do you get to choose whether you're doing more battles or you're doing more fishing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or is it like there's a strict amount of battles and you can opt out of the fishing? Because I know you do have the ability to skip some of that stuff and just let it auto fish.
Yes. And so I have, those walls of text I have sent you?
Yes.
There are walls of text that detail this precisely, and I have kind of skimmed these on purpose. So
yeah, I don't want to know too much, right? And I'm not
that's right.
seeking that out, but
That's right. But my understanding is that so you have this calendar system, and each month is called a season, and you have times during that which are like the normal weekdays where you teach your students, and then on the weekends is where you can do these extra activities. And my understanding is you have activity points to spend that can go towards extra battles, which in the past have been called paralogs, or doing these little side mini games that so my understanding is like you fish to get fish to then go cook, and you make special meals.
Okay.
And I think you can garden. There's a greenhouse as well.
Have you played Stardew Valley at all?
I hear great things.
But you haven't played it?
But I haven't played it.
Well,
Harvest Moon, though. I played that a lot. Yeah.
Well, does this stress you out at all? Like, I know some people are like, I don't know what to do with my time because there's too many things to do. And it sounds like this is a similar situation. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
so
how do you feel about that?
Sometimes I feel that way about these kinds of mechanics. This one feels like whatever I do, there will be a benefit to. And so
that's a great way to look at it.
Yes.
That's the positive way to look.
Yes.
That's the truth, though, right? Like, it's like there's no wrong choice. Just do something.
That's right.
And it'll either be fun or you won't do it again, right?
That's right.
Like, spend your points a different way next time.
That's right.
That's a good attitude. I like that. I'm going to take that attitude, too.
And it seems balanced of like you get some reward out of making whichever choice you did make.
Right.
And you're missing out on something, but you also gain
Right.
something. There are some games where sometimes you feel hoodwinked, like, oh, I chose this and I got this like twig
Right.
when I could have gotten this new unit or like a pot of gold or whatever, right? So I'm hoping that it doesn't push on my FOMO too much.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay.
Yeah. How is that? And that's something I won't be skipping. I know you can auto those. I will be living for it.
Me too. I'm not going to skip
Yep.
the chance to, even if it's just walking around the halls and talking to people.
Yep.
I'm into it. I'm also the kind of person that when they play like an role-playing game, I want to talk to every NPC.
Yes.
And hear every dialogue tree I can.
Yes.
Which obviously you can't in this game because you have limited points.
Yes.
But like I will use them to the maximum or whatever, you know what I mean?
And this is a series staple that in order to get there are support dialogues, which as characters develop relationships, you will unlock cutscenes between them that tell you more about their personalities or their backgrounds. And Fire Emblem has always, in order to invest in those supports, you're giving up other supports. So to get to know all the story of all of your characters, you have to do multiple playthroughs. And so it kind of builds on kind of that legacy there.
And I think for the purpose of this podcast, unless we just both love this game and want to continue this podcast, I assume we're just going to do our initial playthrough and talk about it on this podcast. But I guess I won't rule out the possibility that you and I both want to either take a break and then do that, or just like, hey, let's do another playthrough.
Let's go back through this mess. Yeah.
Because the whole 3 houses part, in theory, right? Like my understanding too is that there's maybe even more than this, but 3 endings. Depending on which house you choose. So that's cool.
Yeah, and there has been a leaker that has been mostly right named Thinny Bomb, and she says there's at least 4 endings.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see.
4. That's a weird number when there's 3 houses.
Yes.
I mean, I could see more than 3, but
yes.
4 is oddly strange, right? Like, that's if you just self-sabotage.
If everything just is on fire at the end. And someone asked her, is that the ending where everyone just gets along? And she said, no.
So I think maybe I'm right. Maybe that's the ending where everybody dies.
That's right.
Cool. So what's next? You have some notes here about the stuff I don't understand.
Oh, yeah. So some of the game mechanics. So you have talked about kind of having a basic understanding from tactics and Mario Rabbids, which you're getting into. I wanted to tell you a little bit. So past entries of the game have had something called the weapons triangle.
Is that sort of a rock, paper, scissors system?
How did you know?
The triangle part. Weapons triangle makes me think of rock, paper, scissors.
Read my mind. So you are right. Swords would beat axes. Axes would beat spears or lances. And spears and lances would beat swords.
Where does magic fit into that?
So different entries, magic would be kind of its own outside thing, and same with bows. And then
I'm good with that.
Yeah. Well, and then in some entries they've color coded
like a 5-way thing,
or they color coded the triangle, so it's like swords are red, axes, and I might have these colors completely wrong, but green, and then blue for lances, and then different kinds of magics would be color coordinated
to beat one of those.
And then bow and arrows as well to fit into that.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But this game has an echoes apparently going backwards to the second game didn't have the weapons triangle.
Okay.
And that was really well received. And so it seems like they're moving forward in 3 houses without the weapons triangle.
Oh, there is no weapons triangle.
There is no weapons triangle.
So it's just purely, and we don't know, but just damage based then or something, just like strength of each weapon. That's all that matters kind of a thing.
That's right. And even without the triangle, axes have always been stronger but less accurate.
Okay.
Swords have been more accurate, or I guess speedier and more accurate than axes, but not as accurate as lances. And then
so it's just like a trade-off.
That's
for different statistics.
That's right. And so I think they're leaning more into that this go round. And then they have.
I kind of might prefer that, to be honest with you. I feel like rock paper scissors style stuff has its place, but it's so simple. Of like, well, they've got a axe, so I've got to use a spear, right? Like it kind of almost limits your choice in a way.
And I think that's the argument for it, is that you had to move strategically, but it was always the same strategy of placing certain characters within range and others outside of range.
But now you get to choose your strategy a little bit more.
That's right. And
like I'm going for speed and not worrying about strength and accuracy or whatever.
That's right. And as you got deeper into the games, the weapons triangle really just helped you with avoid and hit rates. And so if that's what you took away from the game and you didn't learn to pay attention to the rest of the stats, you would find yourself at a major disadvantage in the later game, and it maybe did not do as much to teach you that. And this game seems to really lean into, like, you're teaching your students lances, and they're also getting really good at these other skills that are connected. And so this game also feels more transparent about your character growths than others.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else do you have on there?
Let's see. So for a few games, there were children. Yeah. The name of the podcast, Optimal Pairing,
right,
comes from the conversations of which characters you pair up to kind of get the optimal growth rates for stats of the children.
And I have a question for you. I know that Fire Emblem historically, or I don't know this, but my understanding is that it's been LGBTQ friendly-ish, sort of. You're given the sort of sign.
The sort of sign.
But
yes.
Can you have children that are not from 2 men or 2 women or whatever?
You cannot. You
Okay.
could. They were.
So at least it's biologically.
It's biologically
limited.
Right, biologically sound. You can do S rank, which is like marriage rank pairings with some queer couples.
Okay.
But they do not result in children.
Okay, but you can, in past games, you can make kids and you do, and like you said, the term optimal pairing, you purposefully pick people that.
Yeah.
Is there kids in this game or children? I guess
there are no children in this game, which
I'm good with that.
Kind of splits the fan base, but I feel like we did it enough, and now it's good to pause that.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I feel like that has a element that I'm not as into. That sort of like breeding element in games has never really took off for me.
You're not into that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed to people doing whatever they want to do. You know what I mean?
You're not into digital breeding?
But it's never been my jam.
Which also, so Fire Emblem has gained the reputation of being this waifu culture game.
Yes.
Let's
talk about that then.
Yes. So Awakening, which was the first game to have you do these pairings and the children turn out differently depending on who you hook up. That game, the sex appeal of all the characters was a lot different than the sex appeal of previous Fire Emblems. Not that there weren't, but...
You mean like it headed in that direction? Like it made real sexy characters?
Yes.
For the first time, or for to a greater degree?
To a greater degree. Fire Emblem always had like, the really cute girls, but the cute girls were always like, they're so innocent, kind of cute and young. But then there were also like older characters, and not every character was like meant to be someone's heartthrob.
Okay.
But Awakening was like all the characters are in the 18 to 25 range. They all like don't wear shirts or like show their bodies in a certain way, which is like it went into that like.
Was it limited to female characters?
It was mostly females, but even you have like in Awakenings you have Vake, who has his shirt off, but it's still in a very
patriarchal.
Patriarchal. Yeah, and still kind of from a maybe more of a male fantasy of having that body than like desiring gay man's fantasy of somebody.
But has it ever I mean, it seems like this game has quite a few.
Yes. So this game, I want to say, hits a good balance of catering to folks who are interested in different kinds of bodies, and I think has enough sex appeal without. I think they walk that tightrope of in Awakenings. Some people are like, "Ooh, some of this is a little lewd."
Yeah.
So I think they backed off of that enough, but enough to keep folks happy if they're there for that.
And you use this term, and we both have used it now, waifu culture. I'm not super familiar with this term. I've heard of it mostly in the context of Fire Emblem, but like I've heard it in the context of video games and anime, and I guess is correct me if I'm wrong, is also a beginner into this term. It's the idea like that people are attracted to these fake characters.
Yes.
And they pick somebody they really like, and that's their waifu. Or is that that's a Japanese term, correct?
Yes. And I need to look up the history as well. I just know it's become this cultural word for like this almost like lust after usually fictional anime girls. Gotcha. Usually more girls than women.
Oh, okay. And that's sort of like gross.
Yes.
The idea of them being young girls is gross.
Yes.
I guess there's some argument that it's weird or wrong to be so focused on lusting after fake people.
Yes.
But especially so if they're not of age.
Yes. Yes.
But there's a weirdness there too, because I mean, I'm also like, well, they're not real, and I guess it's better than actually doing things, but
someone's
I don't
fantasy
know.
life.
Yeah.
And that's and I understand that waifu culture, at least so my first understanding was of maybe younger looking folks at least. But it seems like it has expanded beyond that as well. But maybe that is something we can do some research on and return to.
Yeah, because I think that's an interesting part of it, and also one of the reasons a lot of people are turned off by these games, right? Maybe without knowing much about it, or I don't know. I'm not trying to. I don't know. I don't even know much about it, so I'm just I'm open-minded, not about the underage part. That just seems gross.
That's fair, and I think that's also the funny line of so older Fire Emblem games didn't didn't invite objectification of their characters as much, maybe.
Right.
But I think that culture still existed, and I think sometimes the cute innocence piece of that was played off of. But then the newer games, it's like, okay, so Camilla is like 23, and she's
out there.
She's out there, and it's good, and like. Yeah, I guess testing out the audience to see what folks are into. And so it leaned into it more, but at least was more age appropriate, I feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm open, like in some, like, hey, I like to play a video game with a cute girl. Sure, I guess. You know, it's a weird thing to openly admit that almost.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I will be interested to see how this goes that part of it.
Right. As a gay man, I mostly was like, oh, this is in this game? I guess you're right.
Cool.
Yeah. So we have touched a little bit on the fact that going into this game, you will have to make a few choices.
Right.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Do you think you will play with the male or the female protagonist?
I tend to play with female protagonists when given choice in video games. Not exclusively, but I'm leaning that way, partly because of what I just admitted that I don't know that I've ever admitted to anybody, and now I'm saying on a podcast, but like, if she's a cute girl, I'd rather play as a cute girl than some dumpy looking guy. You know what I mean? Like, but if he's cool looking, maybe I'd rather, I don't know. So I'm leaning towards the female protagonist for not very good reasons. So, but also it just doesn't seem like it matters.
Yeah.
And I'm also pro female representation in video games. Like historically, there hasn't been those kinds of options. And so I tend to pick it for that reason too. Like I played Pokemon Let's Go.
Yes.
And you could pick a black girl. And that was like, well, I'm playing as a black girl. That's cool. You know, like I don't think there's ever been a black girl protagonist in most video games. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. Good for you. That's so.
What about you?
You can still S rank people in this game, even though there will not be children.
S rank means marry them in the game?
Yes.
Like your protagonist marries somebody in the game.
Yes.
So is that an argument to play as a male if I wanted to marry a female?
Yes. Well, and
so I hadn't thought about that.
So
that might have just flipped my choice.
You could try new things, Patrick. Well, and so Thanny Bomb, the spoiler, we haven't heard anything official on this, has said there will be some LGBTQIA+ pairings in this game, but
not universal.
Most of them were female avatar or female byleth to female characters, and there was one male to male. And so,
only one. That's a bummer.
Yeah. And so once again, this is a spoiler, like a person who's coming with leaks.
Right. So we don't 100% know that that's true.
That's right.
Given their track record, it sounds like it's likely.
That's right. And they purposely said they peppered a few things in to protect themselves. So they've been right about really major things.
Wait, this person purposely said they spread false information?
Yes.
That seems like a great... like
cover your ass
strategy of like, I'm making half this stuff up.
So, but they've been right about all the like major overarching things. And there have been a few things like so-and-so's dragon's gonna have a beard that like we haven't seen that manifest yet, and we have seen that person riding a dragon.
Okay.
But it just doesn't have a red beard.
It's a really oddly specific detail.
Right. So a few things like that. All that to say, I'm undecided because if I can hook up with some of these characters, and that means I have to choose a particular gender
Right,
at the
and
beginning.
it's based on that. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. It's undecided is where you're standing right now.
That's right.
But are you expecting to get more information that will sway you one way or the other, or you're just going to kind of wait and make the choice in the moment?
Here's when I fire up the game, I'm probably going to Google like what gay relationships can male Byleth have. And
first, hopefully somebody that got the game early can tell you. Yeah.
That's right. And if that information's not there, then we'll just gut check. Do like a 50-50.
Yeah, I will say that as well. For me, also saying what I think right now is based on very limited information of me seeing very little of this game, that I will I will toggle male and female and be like, which do I think looks cooler?
Who speaks to me?
Exactly.
Okay, now here's the big question.
Right, the big question.
Which house are you going to choose? There's the Black Eagles,
right,
led by Edelgard.
Yes.
Mostly sway towards magic.
Okay.
Blue Lions, led by Dimitri. Lances and Knights and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Claude, Golden Deer, leans towards archers.
Okay. I am 90% sure.
Okay.
Pretty sure that I'm going Black Eagles.
Ooh.
Now, I do not... I swear, and you can correct me if I made this up, that Nintendo put out like a little poll thing or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Or like where you could like... Not just a poll. That's not the word I'm looking for. But like... almost like a quiz or something. Did I make this up? Did they put out like a...
I think they did.
If you value this, and or maybe it was just I read the brief synopsis of the like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the, not like of their
personality.
Yeah, not personality, but like what would the personality of a region or like their important values or whatever.
Yes.
And I was like, well, there's no doubt to
Their
me
culture.
it's the Black Eagles.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Can we find that? Is there a description on...
I bet we can find what you're looking for.
And I'll also say that the character Edelgard... So they've been putting out these trailers of like each house, right?
Yeah.
And we're recording this before the
released.
golden... Right, but before the Golden Deer one has come out, right?
Oh, the specific video? Yes.
Yeah, so I've been showing trailers for each of the houses and the like house leader and kind of like... I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, like showing that off.
Their culture, yeah.
And their personalities. And based on the two we've seen, I'm pretty pro Black Eagles. But I would love to read, like, if there is a brief synopsis to confirm that I'm not I'm not getting confused and it wasn't the Golden Deer or whatever.
Okay.
What about you while we try to both furiously look this up on our devices?
Okay, you look that up and I will talk to you about the beauty of Claude.
But that's the one we haven't seen yet, right?
That's right. The Golden Deers. He's a beautiful man. Beautiful brown skin, good green eyes. He is our first bow-centric lord in the series ever. So that's exciting.
Okay.
And so, when they revealed him, I was like, heartthrob, I'm here for you. What do you want me to do, Claude? I will do whatever you ask me. You say jump, I'll ask you how high. But then they released we slowly got like the rest of the students underneath him, and I love all of them as well. And also especially Raphael and Ignatz, who are kind of on the spectrum of what you would call a bear and a twink in the gay community.
Okay.
and I am attracted to kind of extremes, and they kind of meet both of those extremes for me. So all that to say, I'm here for the male waifu culture of the
Nice.
Golden Deer. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm trying to look this up and I can't quite find it, but like they each represent, each of these houses represents a different region in this continent, right?
That's right.
And I'm trying to find, because I remember reading, and I really think it's the one that's related to the Black Eagles.
Uh-huh.
The like,
So they're the Empire, the Dresdian Empire.
I really feel like I liked that, but maybe I'm misremembering.
And they're all kind of magic-y. Like, not everyone, obviously, but more magic-leaning students than the other houses. Blue Eagles is the Holy Kingdom of Fargus, and they have a relationship with the church that the other two do not. And then the Golden Deer are connected to the Leicester Alliance.
What's that?
So it's more of a... It's not a kingdom or an empire. It's more of a democracy, I guess, of an alliance of smaller nobles and commoners as opposed to a hierarchy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find, and I just cannot find it, like their sort of values, theories of life.
Yes.
That's what really is important to me.
Theories of life. Yes, that's good.
But also, I like Edelgard, so, what am I going to say?
I'm surprised you're into the theories of life of fictional characters, Patrick. Just kidding. Whatever does it for you, man. That's great.
Man.
That does not surprise me. I kind of thought you would go Black Eagles.
That doesn't surprise you.
No.
Okay. I haven't, because I haven't seen the Golden Deer trailer. I don't know if I'm surprised or not. for
Okay.
you, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So
We can revisit that.
yeah, and I mean, obviously, for our next episode, we will have already made the choice. But I am like pretty sure I was into that one.
Okay.
The Black Eagles.
That seems
based
right.
on the 2 trailers I've seen, and based on what I remember when I saw a little quick rundown, I was like, oh, no choice.
Bam, Black
very
Eagles.
clear.
Yes.
For me.
Which,
so I think that's funny that you're very clear. I mean, obviously it's not funny. It's normal.
Yeah.
Everybody's different.
Absolutely. And how much have you looked at the nobles pre versus post time skip designs?
Not at all. And frankly, I didn't even know there was like a different, whatever you want to call it. Like,
Yeah.
you just said it, character design or a character model or whatever.
Yes. So we don't know the details, but it's clear that these characters have gone through journeys in those 5 years.
And so you're the hot guy gets a huge scar on his face, and you're like, oh no.
This hot guy just gets hotter. But Dimitri, one of the characters, loses an eye.
Oh,
And so I'm so
he's got a
curious how that
sexy eye
happens.
patch.
That's right. He goes from like good boy to bad boy.
That's funny.
Okay, so, and we've touched on this. Permadeath. Are you gonna leave it on or off?
I mean, I feel like because I haven't played that many tactical strategy games / I have never played a Fire Emblem game, I'm leaning towards not using it. Or as I understand, isn't there like you can have it on, but there's still a rewind function?
Yeah.
Here's my other question, and maybe we don't know this yet, but if it's something you can toggle, then I'll definitely consider playing with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I understand that maybe you can't toggle it mid-battle or something.
Gotcha.
But like, or I have no idea. But if it's something, I would definitely be open to playing it with the caveat, as I understand, that there is some way to like retract a battle or something like that. And I don't really know the details of that.
So
if I play with it, that's the only, I'm going to do that. And then and if there is a way to toggle it, that might lead me to toggling it off or on, depending on how comfortable I am with the game. You know what I mean? Like
That's fair.
If I'm like, I'm losing every battle and losing everybody in it, then I'm just not going to use it. But if I'm like doing every once in a while, then I might consider it. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Echoes, the latest game, which was a remake of the second Fire Emblem, introduced something called Mila's Turn Wheel. And in this game, it returns called the Divine Pulse. But apparently, and folks are hoping it gets rebalanced because it was like you get so many rewinds per battle.
Gotcha.
And they would like add up. So you got 3 your first battle. If you didn't spin them, they went on and you got 3 more. So you'd have 6 in your second battle. And so if you didn't use them, when you got to the end game, you would have like so many built up that it kind of destroyed the tension of the game.
Gotcha.
But this
so like in your final battle, you can just continually reset or whatever
until you find the perfect run.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so a lot of folks are hoping it is still around, but are hoping that it gets rebalanced to where it can't be cheesed at the end.
Gotcha.
And so I am leaning towards keeping the permadeath on because of that. Because before, me coming back to Fire Emblems was an awakening where you could finally turn the permadeath off for the first time, and I was like, oh, thank God.
Right.
Because that was such a stressor for me. And especially, like, you invest in these characters, and you have these other characters kind of hanging out in your barracks that you haven't been using. That's like, oh, you can patch them in, but they're level 1, and all your other characters are, like, level 18 already. Didn't speak to me.
Yeah.
But with this mechanic, I think it's like punishing enough that can undo it and figure out kind of keeps the tension enough, I think.
Okay.
Without being too punishing.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's our final discussion or final choice kind of thing, which is almost like a choice we might make together / affected by the podcast, is the DLC. The game has like already announced DLC, and there's a lot of
that's right
questions about what that's going to look like, but there is some information that they've put out so far. Mm-hmm. We know that there's an expansion pass, and if you buy that, immediately you get a new outfit for Byleth. Is that how we say this?
That's right.
Your main character. You also eventually they have dates for this too. By October 31st, there will be some additional auxiliary maps, support items, and more.
Ooh.
I don't know what that means. I guess some extra battles or something like that.
Probably more battles and items. Probably more seals, which are required to in this game pass exams, so you have access to new classes. So probably just so you can have more classes available on certain units.
And then by the end of December, or the end of this year, there will be additional quests and costumes. So some side quests, some more costumes, and it says plus a free update. So I guess I don't know what that means either. There's going to be some sort of free quests, and then there's some additional paid ones or something.
Yeah, I guess some kind of quality of life update alongside that. I don't know.
And then the big question too, is that by the end of April of 2020, next year, there will be new story content with additional playable characters, locations, and more, plus a free update. So I'm guessing everybody's kind of speculating about that. Like, is that a big? Presumably, it sounds like it. They're making it sound like it will be a significant DLC.
Yeah,
and that's
a
probably
big add-on.
the big reason to buy this.
Yes.
And so if this podcast goes well and we're having fun playing this game, I think we might be obligated to buy it just to play that additional quest.
Absolutely, and I'll probably end up buying that last one. Those in betweens, it really just depends, and I have plenty of time to.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling like, I've just got to have this right now. Yeah.
I don't need the extra outfit for Byleth. I saw the outfit too, and I definitely don't need it.
I don't know. The female one, the original female one is not as good as the new female one, in my opinion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough.
Yep.
Cool. I think that's most of the things we wanted to talk about, and we're right around an hour here, so I think it's probably time to. Well, I guess there is one question on here that we haven't talked about, and you can tell me this. You've told me that past Fire Emblem games have online elements to them, and I know I saw like somebody posted the Japanese, or maybe it's not even Japanese, but like a card. Like, you know how if you buy a game digitally, but you buy it at Target or something, you get a little card.
Yes.
And that they showed that it had optional, online required or whatever.
Yes.
There is some way for us. Is there a way for us to interact in this game?
So with Nintendo, so these are the things you can do. You can see how people are using the calendar, and it's unclear if that's
so I'll be able to see you as my friend's use of time?
So maybe. It sounds like it's a more global thing of you're seeing that 60% of people on day one chose this and 20% chose this. But I would kind of like if I could snoop on your calendar.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
And then the second thing is that on maps where people are dying a lot, you will see the areas where they're dying.
Is this a thing you can toggle on or off, or we don't know?
We don't know.
That almost seems like something I might not want to see.
Yes. But you get rewarded extra gold and experience if you're able to keep your units in there surviving for a certain amount of time.
Okay.
And then the third is that they call them exchange students. So students, once again, will it be from friends or will it be from randos?
Okay.
Will show up at your school and you can assign them as assistants to your students in battle. So they'll give them little stat boosts and things like that.
Okay.
So,
but no way for you and I to fight.
No.
Bummer.
Yeah.
It's too bad. But it sounds like there's plenty of content in this game.
Yes.
Something we didn't talk about is one of the directors or somebody that is highly involved in this game.
Yes.
Recently said that they had an 80-hour playthrough of it. So definitely sounds like we don't need
lots of content.
extra little things like that.
That's right.
Cool. Well, I think then we'll wrap it up and just just to share with you, listener, our plan. So this is our first episode. The game hasn't come out yet. We're gonna be doing this about every 2-ish weeks. We're gonna do it. The plan right now is to release twice a month. First and third weekends of the month, we'll release a new episode where we kind of catch up on our playthroughs and talk to we'll go our separate ways. We'll go play our game, play Fire Emblem. We're going to try to pace ourselves to be somewhat similar in our pacing. And I don't have much Fire Emblem experience, but you said maybe chapter based. They typically have chapters. We'll do 5-ish chapters.
I think we're shooting for 5-ish story chapters. If that feels too slow or too fast, we'll adjust.
But we're going to try to pace our playthrough, and we'll just kind of come back and talk about the choices we've made and the characters we're interacting with, and that will be very, very spoiler heavy if you're not playing the game. But this is a great way for you to find out if you want to play the game or to follow along with people who are playing it in a slightly different way, because it sounds like we'll all be playing slightly different games, right? Because I'll pick a different house, then I'll interact with different students, and I will kill off people by accident unless I don't use permadeath or whatever. So this should be fun. I'm really excited. Thanks, Austin, for doing this with me.
Thank you, Patrick, for inviting me on this endeavor.
Yeah, and thanks to you guys out there and girls out there and women. Yeah, I'm trying my best here.
You're doing great.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for listening
and
to our podcast.
Non-binary folks.
There you go. And yes, I'm excluding somebody every time. Okay, so a real quick shout out to, I also do this podcast called Super Switch Heads, which you should check out. Mm-hmm. And Austin, you're sometimes guest on the show.
Yes.
Including, Austin's going to be on the show on July 30th, and we're going to talk about Fire Emblem then, so check out that.
Come join us for that.
Yeah, Super Switch Heads episode. That will be episode number 26, and you can get a little bit extra before our second episode of this.
That's right. Extra goodies.
So I guess that's it. Thanks, everybody.
All right. That's a wrap for the first episode. Peace and blessings of Saros.